This is so cool. If Stellar's your thing, this is a real treat for you tonight. Hopefully you appreciate the coverage. All right, so what we're going to do now is pull this up. This is in regards to ARF. I've covered this in the past. I think it's very significant to get more into this. But yeah, check this out. Let's go ahead and share it on the screen. Here's the particular update. This was March 6th, but a lot of people, again, didn't necessarily cover it. I know some other influencers did, but they have their perspective. I have mine. Nothing against them. I want to get more into a little bit of the nitty gritty of this. I don't think it's something that should just get swept under the rug. Okay, not a rug pull, but swept under the rug. So let's go ahead and full screen this. ARF. Now, I'm not talking about a dog arf, but they got to, you got to get credit where credit's due. Exciting milestone. ARF exceeds 1 billion liquidity, and look at this statement. Quote: "Our goal is clear," says Ali Erhad Nalbant. He's the co-founder and CEO of ARF. He says to empower global financial institutions to break free from traditional constraints and enable them to pioneer a financial infrastructure that's accessible to billions in the coming decade. Remember during the whole thing of the band coverage and the other video? In that other segment, we talked about the pioneers. And we talked about the whole thing of, enabling institutions to, I guess you could say, break free from all this, right? So this statement, 1 billion on-chain liquidity volume, powering the future of global payments with receivable-backed liquidity. This is something I mentioned a long, long time ago. I mentioned that watch out for ARF and Stellar. Why is that? Because this whole notion that, and this is not FUD, I don't do that. I love Ripple's XRP. I hold that, right? But I look at it from the perspective of there's narratives. And one of the narratives that always exists when it comes to XRP and Stellar is that when it comes to XRP, you have the ODL solution. And that's what makes them stand out. True, right? On-demand liquidity would have solved so many things if, especially last recession, right? When it came to bank bailouts. If we could have not had somebody like, Gensler, and if our whole country would have fully embraced that during that time. But that technology didn't even exist anyway, right? My thing is this: ARF, Stellar. You have to look at ARF and Stellar in the similarly compared to Ripple's XRP and ODL, right? The on-demand liquidity. ARF, to a sense, not fully, right? Never be to the monumental scale as far as like what ODL can do. But again, can we provide something that would at least allow Ripple, Stellar to be even in a little bit in that mix? Isn't that a good thing? Don't you want to see a little bit more of some like competition? I think that's a good thing. I think ARF allows that to happen. So I pointed that out before in the past. And if anything, I wanted to get more into some of that. So I'm going to take you to this link, and it gets into the nitty gritty about what recently happened. Let's go ahead and share this as well. Okay. And on this page, I'm going to blow it up a little bit more. I guess I'll accept. But yes, it's this recent report. And why is this all significant? Well, again, March 6th. But think about on-chain liquidity backed by real-world asset tokenization. How many times do we see examples about RWA tokenization? Yeah, your BlackRocks, Larry Fink talking about this, right? Your Vanguards a little bit, your State Streets, institutions accelerating cross-border payments. Look at this. Zug Switzerland, ARF, a global transaction services platform at the intersection of Web3 and traditional finance, announced that it has surpassed that milestone that we talked about. On-chain liquidity volume to support global payments. Doesn't that sound like on-demand liquidity? You better believe it does. And the connection with Stellar, again, this is an update. This milestone underscores ARF's category-defining leadership with its unique blend of blockchain-powered solutions for global financial institutions. The thing is this, guys. When you see statements from their CEOs like this about regulatory development by tackling real-world issues, the goal of laying out the foundation for financial systems that universally would provide more access to this whole thing over the next decade. I mean, this is like Stellar's own version, if you will, of ODL to a sense. Not, again, I don't think it's going to be to the mass scale of like what Ripple's doing, but again, to even be part of that mix, it just tells you that Stellar is so much more than just one layer of what is the narrative that's on the surface. Embracing the challenge of global payments with groundbreaking solutions. Look at this part real quick. To ensure adequate liquidity for global transactions, financial institutions rely on their own equity or credit from lenders. Think about that. Doesn't it sound like what we were talking about in regards to this whole outline from earlier? Yeah, that's why I make the reference. However, these practices limit their capital structures and present opportunity costs for growing transaction volumes. Likewise, lenders such as banks encounter challenges in funding financial institutions due to their lack of operational transparency and robust risk management. Are you now getting an idea, if you never heard of ARF, of where we made that reference again to ODL? It gets better, guys. It gets better. Look at this. In response to these challenges in the global payments industry, ARF introduced the world's first real world asset based working capital solution for global transactions. ARF Liquidity brings internet speed to international payments and addresses a $4 trillion liquidity gap through blockchain tech. Supported by Stellar, ARF is at the forefront of providing enhanced access to global financial system, proving the practical value of blockchain in solving real-world financial challenges. Wow. Think about it. Don't overthink about it. Why is that so important? Because this is Stellar's plug and connect to competing with Ripple's XRP for ODL. It always has been, and it always will be as long as they still have that plug and connector. And so I thought to myself, it's been a while since we talked about, ARF and Stellar. But this milestone, I do think is a big, big deal. There's this other thing I want to get into about the transparency of the protocol. I didn't mean to stop the share. Sorry about that. Let's pull that up again. Look what it says. Their commitment to innovation extends to its on-chain transparency protocol, testament of leveraging blockchain's core attribute. Goes on to mention about liquidity provision, overdue payments. Think about this, overdue payments. Why am I highlighting that? Well, remember how we talked about with Ripple's XRP, taking on that debt. What is debt? Debt basically is overdue payments. But what about a monumental scale? So my thing is this, right? And don't get me wrong. As the saying goes, don't get it twisted. This whole notion that is only Ripple, I don't think that's the case. And that's not FUD. I mean, Ripple and Quant are my number ones as far as the ones I think they could do the most. And it's just a difference of opinion, right? Stellar's consistently in my top 3 or 4, right? Of my top 5. But when you look more into the picture of things, it's the ones that team up to enable the tech to happen. That reference, overdue payments, eliminates the need for intermediaries, offering risk mitigation. Sorry, I'll put it back on the screen. I don't know why it keeps unsharing it. Accurately represent on chain. Eliminates the need for intermediaries. I already said that, sorry. Offering risk mitigation for liquidity providers, enabling them to make informed strategic fund allocations. The whole point is to refill that, to go to like the soda dispenser, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Coke, visualize it, right? Don't overthink about it. Back in the days of when we didn't have those dispensers, you had to go to the person at the counter and literally go to them and be like, hey, I need to get a refill, right? Well, ODL with Ripple's XRP is that refill, right? That's that refill for those big banks and so on, even retail. But to have Stellar even being able to compete, that is huge, right? And then the whole thing of smart contracts, like we talked about earlier. So, guys, I'm telling you flat out, to compete with Ripple through their own version of an ODL mechanism, that's big. Now to compete, like we also covered in the other videos, competing with Chainlink in regards to oracles. It's not that they're going to be the king of oracles. No, it's creating a sense of solutions to compete. That's always a good thing. And then to mention some more about this, about ARF, because they're what? It's a solution for financial institutions, accessing traceable transactions, scalable liquidity solutions. Scalable liquidity solution. Think about that for a second. I will stop the screen on that. I keep apologizing. Right? We have to address this. Scalable liquidity solutions will only exist if you have the technology that will allow you to do just that scalability. We already have the connector with ARF. What is the flip of the switch moment to get the job done? Common factor is the whole thing of ISO 222. That is, in my opinion, where we either have a flip of the switch afterwards or that moment leading up. I think it's afterwards because that's utility in motion. But my thing is mandates. If the text says Swift, the old model, is outdated tech, and the messages get garbled up in the system, and you need a new system or a standard with a messaging service that's going to be paired up with, for example, what Stellar is doing with ARF, with this liquidity solution to move it a lot more faster. What was the reference with blockchain at blazing fast, like lightning speed, like speed of light? What standards are paired with that? What compliance is compared with that? The ISO 222 compliant messaging system, you know? So this is why we cover so many of these things from ISO, because it's not only Ripple does it, Stellar is there too. They sit at that seat. This is why I'm diversified. This is why I'm not going to just be like, hey, I'm an XRP maxi, right? So I think that was worth pointing out. Now, we did talk about 2025. We always talk about 2025. Is there any reference to 2025? Yeah, there is. Look at this. This is big. Expanding horizons in global transaction services. Look at this statement. I'll full screen this one. This is good stuff. You should see this instead of my mug. ARF in itself is expanding horizons into global transaction services, targeting 100 billion in transactions by 2025. Some people say, well, that's just a coincidence, Max. That's just the next year. I mean, I see where you go with this. Okay, I hear you. But the strategic move aims to eliminate traditional obstacles. What are some of the traditional obstacles? Well, don't get it twisted. Traditional obstacles would be the likes of Swift, the MT messaging standard. Imagine sending a cross-border payment, like I've always mentioned before. I always mention this because some new people. Bank of Spain, for instance, or Bank of, Greece. That's a whole language in itself, Greek, right? I send it to the Bank of South Korea. It's going to get truncated. You're going to have problems. How would you like to have a solution where all of that solved instantaneous? So you're using the tech of ARF, you're using the tech of Stellar, and you combine that with ISO 222 because there's a mandate. So when we talk about even things like with JASMY in Japan, data free flow with trust, think about that, data free flow. The data needs to freely flow. There can't be any issue of, for instance, liquidity provisions that causes the messaging standard, if you will, to get lost in translation. ISO 222 solves that. So you have two things being solved. You just need the final connector. It's literally like, pretend this was a wire, right? It's not. This is my back scratcher, I know. But pretend that this represented a wire. ARF is here, right? Stellar is here. The connector at the end for ISO 2022 is here. But as we speak, the problem is Swift. Well, take that out of the equation. Inject ISO 222. Way better thing for Web3. Message is not going to get garbled up. And if anything, time is money. Not having to call somebody up on the phone and say, hey, do you speak Korean? Or the guy from the Bank of South Korea saying, hey, I don't speak Greek, and then having the final, and then as a result, you want to talk about RTGS, real-time gross settlements with finality. This is the whole problem. You're not finalizing a transaction, and as a result, time is money, and those transactions go sky high. How do we know that? We know that there was examples in the past that in order to send, what was it, $10 trillion from point A to point B, from central bank of Greece to central bank of South Korea, those central banks, whether it is the BIS or whatever one it is, a central bank of, I don't know, Greece, for instance, getting hit with a $60 billion fee. Stellar, as we know, will do $10 million in stable coins for what, guys? 0.5 zeros and a 1. Now, multiply that by some of these crazy figures. You don't think that you're ever going to see more than 25 cents or a dollar on Stellar? If time is money, and it definitely is, again, understand why you hold Stellar. Understand why you hold XRP or any of the stuff tied to ISO 220, kind of going off the rails here. But I wanted to point that out. And I do think it's crucial to understand the bigger picture. Traditional obstacles is obviously the likes of SWIFT. Liquidity, right? Limited liquidity access to the global payments industry supported by ARS transparency protocol, scalable liquidity. This initiative ensures a more inclusive and efficient financial industry. But we do need some things to be finalized, ISO 222 and so on. So I want to address this in closing. Here's some of my conclusion in regards to the research and the key findings. And basically speaking, let's put this back on. It's like this. You have to keep in mind the significance of this, like the goals that were mentioned by Ali Erhat Nalbant, the CEO of ARF. The breakdown of the significance. There's a few key things I got to break down before we conclude this, because there's a lot of stellar coverage tonight, is there not? And there's a little bit more, believe it or not. And that'll be the last one. So what is the significance? Well, for one, as we know, it's a significant milestone for ARF. We already talked about that. But the other significance is a validation of that basic concept that we talked about. Why is that crucial? Well, it's this achievement, big milestone. It validates the effectiveness of ARF's approach to bridging the gap between traditional finance and the world of Web3, decentralized finance. By them being able to use Stellar's tech and Stellar also being able to use ARF, again, is the 2 out of 3 step approach to getting the job done for Stellar's own version of on-demand liquidity. In the future, moving forward, when anybody, if you're a fan of Stellar, if you see Stellar and ARF, you should immediately be thinking of, wow, I need to pay attention to this update. Why is that? Competing with Ripple's XRP for on-demand liquidity. Already mentioned that, won't mention it anymore. But this whole thing does address a major need. What is the major need? ARF's liquidity solution. It does, in fact, tackle a significant challenge for the $4 trillion liquidity gap in what? International payments. There is a gap. Look more into it. Who's reporting on some of this stuff? Well, some of the other guys, some of the ones that kind of, have something stuck in their throat because whatever, and it's okay. But it's not just him, it's other ones. It's understanding that there is a huge liquidity gap in international payments. Now, we know that Quant sits at the table and they provide their solution with Overledger. But again, refilling that cup, it's the refills. It's not necessarily saying, well, it's just CBDCs all the way and that's it. Look at it from a layman's point of view. Just like Ripple's XRP, recognizing, are you a retail or central bank? Do you need more liquidity? I'll fill you up. Can Stellar also fill them up? Yes, through ARF. What are some of the implications of all this for you, me, and everybody else that holds Stellar? Well, while we're talking about the retail side of things, understand there is implications regards to Stellar getting involved in the bigger mix. So it's increased adoption, and we know this. But our success does, in fact, depend on using Stellar's blockchain tech. And that's a win for them, right? That's why they got involved with Stellar. It will strengthen Stellar's position as a viable platform for what? RWA, and especially real-world financial applications. I feel as though that this will definitely attract more businesses to explore Stellar for their own specific solutions. So it's not just saying, hey, we're going to get involved with ARF because this is going to allow us to compete with, Ripple for ODL. No, it's also saying, hey, this is going to work. And who else can we get on board to join what? Our ecosystem. Say what you want. It's not just going with a one trick pony. Now, it will create a sense of enhanced credibility for Stellar. Hear me out. And also ARF. ARF's achievements serves as a testament in itself to the capabilities of Stellar. How so? Well, by potentially leveraging, or I should say leading, I know sometimes get garbled up, to increase trust and adoption of the platform. Yes, a lot of people have not heard of ARF. You know, there needs to be more trust. But ISO 222 goes live, then you see the utility example in motion. That develops a sense of trust, even institutional side of trust. Say what you want. When retail sees that the institutions trust the tech, then retail will immediately follow. That, in my opinion, is a fact. Yeah, there's a few people who say, no, I don't agree with it. I'm talking about the majority of retail. All right. What about ARF? We're talking about Stellar. What about ARF? Because at the end of the day, they do have a say, right? I feel as though that it's going to create market expansion for ARF. Reaching this in itself would be a huge liquidity milestone moving forward. They already have it. But it positions ARF to potentially expand its services and attract a wider range. Yes, that's right, a wider range of financial institutions. Again, as the saying goes, once they have proven that they've done it with Stellar, other institutions will follow. Then it ends up being a win for ARF, but then it also ends up being a win for Stellar because then ARF can say, yeah, we're paired with Stellar and their tech. Institutions say, we want some more of that. That's more of mass adoption. Institutional mass adoption is more appealing than retail all the way. As the saying goes, money talks. That's a lot more money compared to what? Retail side of things. In conclusion, we all got to point out some final things in regards to this R segment because there is one more stellar segment. And that is this. This achievement, it is a big milestone. It's worth pointing out. Shouldn't get swept under the rug at all. But it is a positive step for ARF and Stellar moving forward. It does, in fact, showcase the whole uh, supply and demand for the potential blockchain tech and DLT to revolutionize the financial landscape by addressing real world problems. $4 trillion gap is a huge real world problem. I mean, that's more than the GDP of some countries. Here's some points to consider. While it's crucial to stay obviously updated about some of this stuff, and it is a positive sign to see what's going on in regards to it all, we have to keep in mind that both entities, both Stellar and even ARF, are dependent on their each other's tech and the dependencies on continuously like innovating and adapting to the ever evolving financial landscape and things. But say what you want. ISO 222 goes live, fully implemented. Watch out for ARF and Stellar to do some huge things. And then let's face it, everybody will be talking about it then. You better believe it. Some of you guys ask what cold storage solution I use. I use this, and it is the Decent Wallet. All right. I also, of course, have a ledger like this. All right. You can get a discount basically from going into the affiliate link, which is in all the live video descriptions and recorded and so on. And for the yahoos that are out there, they're like, this is just a shield. And, Will Fix pointed this out, and it's a great point. Were you aware that you don't necessarily get a discount link just going straight to the site? No, you actually have to go through a platform like this. So how cool is that? I don't think anybody's complaining about that. But anyway, use the link, get a discount. There's another one here. If you're the type of person you want to get one for you and your significant other, you could get two of them. They actually have another promotion, which is this, and I think this is cool. You can get an all-in-one card wallet plus backup card package. Interesting. I thought that was cool. And again, one of the main key things I like about the Decent Wallet is not having to do the red tape of, jumping through all the hoops for XDC and the custom folder. I mean, Edward Vincent can vouch on that. Some of you guys can too as well in regards to Ledger. That was a pain in the butt. You don't have that problem. You literally open up your phone, it's on your app, track everything that's going on, right? And saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. You know the drill. Check it all out though if you wish to do so. It is truly the cold storage solution that I use for the most part. There's still some on Ledger that I kind of split it up on it and so on. So it is what it is. But if I have preference over one, I'm going with this one. A lot easier to use and so on. And some people, even to this day, still ask me which one to use.